Ой, ძაღლმა თუ დაყეფა, მიკროფონს დავამიუტებ ჩემთან.
Greetings. I would like to welcome everybody. This is our social media platform, Dario, and I'm Tony Kaberishvili. My friends here in Texas call me Tony. I would like to tell you that we have been on the air for several years and made more than 1,700 videos on our YouTube channel. Our broadcast originally was in Georgian, our native language, as well as in Russian, mainly targeting our neighboring countries from the Caucasus region. And I'm glad to announce that starting from today, Dario will be broadcasting also in English. We named the new podcast Geopoliticus. You know that at present Georgia, as well as Ukraine, Moldova, and entire Caucasus is fighting for its freedom. In my opinion, it is crucial to spread out the correct and fair information because we all have common enemy. Now it's time to me to introduce our two hosts, Ian Meurmishvili, prominent Georgian journalist, right now joining us from Washington, D.C., and Georgi Kacharava, highly demanded expert in international security, joining us from Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia. So, my friends, the air is yours.
Uh-huh. Well, thank you very much, Tonika. Or should I say Tony, because you're in Texas. Thank you very much. This is a pleasure to be a co-host and to help you with launching the English language broadcast. I believe it's very important, and hopefully we will manage to get some information out to the people that may not be as tuned in some of the events that are happening, not only in Georgia but also in the region, in Eurasia, in Russia's neighboring countries. So I'm very happy to be here with Georgi, and hopefully, if you have any questions, by the way, we're always very happy to take questions and comments. So send them our way. And now I will let Georgi introduce himself, and then we'll launch right into the discussion.
I'm very grateful, Ia, for the introduction and your introductory words. And I would like to greet our audience, first of all. And I hope that our broadcast will be very interesting, not only today, but in the future as well. So, and for that reason, I would like to ask you guys to like and subscribe to this channel. So we are also pleased to host you here.
Yep. Indeed. Subscribe, share, spread the word, and send us questions to make it as interactive with the audience as possible. So the first topic that we thought about to start this first broadcast is Georgian president's meeting with President-elect Donald Trump in Paris. In Georgia, President Trump met with many different leaders of different countries. Some over 40 leaders were present at the reopening of the Notre Dame Chapel in Paris. But I think one of those, at least from the region standpoint, one of the most important meetings was the one between Salome Zurabishvili and Donald Trump. And the reason why it's important is that Georgia is going through this unprecedented crisis for the country. The country that's used to demonstrations virtually every year, if not once in every 6 months, there is something big happening. People are coming out in the streets quite often, especially in the past few years. But this time, it's not just the Tbilisi streets, which is the capital of Georgia, of course, but also in other cities. There was, at one point, there were some over 40 cities, towns, villages reported to have had some sort of protest demonstrations, which is unheard of in Georgia. And I would like to say that it's probably a global news as well, where the entire country was demonstrating against something. Demonstrations are still happening in Tbilisi as we speak now, 14 consecutive days. They have not stopped. There are also demonstrations in Batumi, Kutaisi, Zugdidi. There was a major march in Rustavi, which is the second largest city of Tbilisi. So it's very important to keep in mind the situation in the country as we're talking about President Zurabishvili's meeting with President-elect Trump. The Georgian Dream is hoping that Georgia's relations with the United States will be much better after Donald Trump takes office on January 20th. But there are some questions about that. So that's one aspect that Georgi and I will try to have a discussion about and see what could be feasible for the Georgian Dream or for the Georgian opposition and President Zurabishvili. So with that overview, Georgi, would you like to add anything to the overview? I probably omitted some very important things that you would like to add.
You just mentioned all the very important aspects of what is going on in Georgia, and the crucial importance of the meeting between President Zurabishvili and President Trump. Why it is important, in my opinion, because this is a crucial moment for the country, and to have an access to incoming president, head of an administration in the United States, to have right information from the first hand, from the outgoing, basically president of Georgia, on the events that this country is experiencing now, which are unprecedented, as you already mentioned, is a very important. And I would like also to thank probably President Macron, who was actually brokering this meeting, and he was basically also present at this meeting. And we also know that today was a very interesting phone call from President Macron to, let's say, de facto ruler of Georgia, the Mr. Bidzina Ivanishvili, where he urged him, President Macron urged Mr. Ivanishvili to facilitate, the process of releasing those who were actually in the custody during all these demonstrations, and to soften the grip of the law enforcement against the demonstrators, and the peaceful demonstrators, first of all. So all these events are, of course, interconnected, and I think that more to see in the coming days and weeks, probably. But also we also have to understand that in this whole process that we are now witnessing in our country, basically, I would say that there are several milestone, basically, dates that we have to look for, which is the first one is the 14th of December, where the ruling party intending to organize the presidential elections, and on the 29th of December, they are going to have an inaugural ceremony for the elected president. So we also have to understand that President Zurabishvili, not recognizing the results of the last parliamentary elections, she said that all the processes that we are witnessing now, I'm talking about the inaugural session of the parliament and all the other appointments of the ministries and the prime minister,
I
basically
think
are illegal. And
that
that's why she basically states that all these elections that we're facing now in December, I'm talking about presidential elections, so-called, she will not recognize it, and she will not leave her post. That
mhm,
creates another
yeah,
spin in the processes here, which we call crisis,
that's
deep
a very
political crisis.
important point to, I'm sure, our Georgian viewers and people that are monitoring Georgia closely will understand exactly what you're saying. Um, when you're saying that President Zurabishvili is not recognizing the government as legitimate, she's not recognizing the parliament as legitimate because she's not. She came out shortly after the elections and stated that the elections were not conducted in a free and fair manner. And as the president who's overseeing the election process, so to say, she did not recognize the elections legitimate. So everything that Georgi's talking about is basically stemming from that announcement that if the elections are not legitimate, the parliament that was elected is also illegitimate. Therefore, the government that the parliament approved is illegitimate. There's another technical aspect here, which is that the president is supposed to call in the first session of the newly elected parliament, which President Zurabishvili has not done. Therefore, according to the Georgian constitution, this parliament cannot be considered as constitutional because it's omitting this very important technical step, which is for the president to call in the first session. So everything, all the illegitimacy talk that we're hearing and the discussions about it is stemming from the elections, which were conducted on October 26th of this year, highly contested. OSCE has not issued a report yet. There is a preliminary report that says that the elections were competitive, however, not free and not fair. So we'll have to wait and see what the final report says. None of the Western governments have recognized, with very minor exceptions, have recognized Georgian government or the parliament. Hungary is one of the first countries in the EU and NATO that has recognized the Georgian government, and as a very close ally of the Georgian dream at the moment. We have not seen anything coming from the EU. Washington certainly has not congratulated or recognized the elections. So Georgia is in this very, not just actual crisis that is unfolding in the streets of Tbilisi every day. Demonstrators in the streets, police in riot gear, using force, in many cases, unjustified force against the demonstrators. But we also have a constitutional crisis happening. And as Georgi mentioned, on the 14th, the parliament will proceed and approve the selection of the new president. Which is, by the way, a change from the previous presidential elections. According to Georgia's constitution, this time the president will be, Georgia will be switching fully to a Republican parliamentary republic, I'm sorry, which means that the parliament, as well as the local governments and so-called electoral representatives, will be electing the president. So Salome Zurabishvili is the last, based on this constitution, the last directly elected president and nationwide, basically, person that has the country's legitimacy. And we'll see what happens in the future. So it's both a physical, financial, economic crisis for the country because the foreign direct investment has decreased tremendously in the third quarter, and we have a constitutional crisis on top of it. So again, Georgi, it's too many things that I mixed up. So if you need to clarify something in what I just talked about, please jump in.
No, actually, you are rightly pointing out that it's a complex issue here. We are in a deep political crisis that actually spreads to other fields and spheres of the life of this country, economy, societal well-being, and so I hope that it will not hit the social system of this country, but that is also possible because everything is interconnected. And we all start to feel that the mood among the people is getting more nervous because the situation is full of uncertainty, and this uncertainty actually spreads also among the business people because day before yesterday, we had a big gathering in the TV of major business people and business representatives that were talking about, the situation in the country that, in this kind of environment, they cannot make business. And we are not talking about only the foreign direct investments, but we are talking about the already established businesses, the domestic businesses that were striving to build their enterprises for 20, 25, 30 years. And now it is not under threat, but it's always has to be mentioned that they are basically slowing down their development, and they're very concerned about this. And these are people who are providing jobs. These are people who are providing taxes to the state, etc. So these are people who are basically are moving this country ahead. And if they're concerned that this means something for the whole public, and this is not only business people, we are talking about the academics, we're talking about lawyers, we're talking about different the professional unions like doctors, etc. So everybody is expressing their own concern, and this is spreading all over society. And you rightly mentioned before that what we are witnessing now, that all major cities, towns, and settlements actually have joined the process of the protests, and people are on in the street demanding justice, electoral justice, and democracy.
Yeah.
Basically, this is unprecedented for this country,
Hmm.
and it's
Yeah.
important to understand.
Another thing, we sort of deviated from Trump Zurabishvili meeting. Let's get back to that in a second. But we have to also mention that this massive demonstrations where hundreds of tens of thousands, we don't know, two, 300,000 people maybe countrywide. Again, the numbers, I could be off with the numbers, but estimation is that Tbilisi had over 200,000 people demonstrating on some days. So it's a very significant number of people. Georgia itself is about 3.2 million people. So if you take into account, it's like almost 10% of the country that's out in the streets. That's very significant. And we also, another point to sort of educational for people that may not be uh, following Georgia that closely, is that these demonstrations have no political leadership, or there is nobody, no one entity that organizes. They are completely self-organized, mainly by the students and youth groups. Most people that are sort of leading this in different ways. Again, there is no leader of the movement, but these people are Generation Z representatives, which were very active and vocal during the March demonstrations when the Georgian government first introduced the foreign agents law in Georgia. So that's another point to mention, that these are not organized demonstrators, which in some cases causes a question or prompts a question. Okay, if they're not organized, how do they communicate what the demands or what the um, goals of the demonstrations are? But now we're hearing the two major demands of the demonstrators. One is immediate release of all the people detained by the authorities during this past 2 weeks. And we're talking about some 500 people so far. Again, a very high number for a small country like Georgia. And the second one is scheduling free and fair new elections in Georgia. So we'll see where those demands go. We'll see if, especially after President Macron's conversation with Bidzina Ivanishvili, will yield to any results, and if there will be any sort of opening for new elections. That remains to be seen. But unless you want to add something to that, Georgi, let's talk very
No,
briefly Trump.
yeah, I just want to briefly, yes, I just want to briefly highlight my opinion about the meeting of President Trump and Zurabishvili. I think from the body language that we are all seeing in this during this meeting, there was short video, but quite telling video in terms of both presidents were, they were happy to talk to each other first. They were smiling, and I think there was a very clear understanding between them. And third party, which was President Macron, he was also very happy and smiley. So I think it was some chemistry between them in this conversation, and if we can say it, I think they understood each other very well. And that's what I read from the body language and the gestures and the movements that they pose there.
Mm,
Well, what results it will yield for us and for the United States and the relationship between these two countries, it remains to be seen, of course, in the future. But I have a positive attitude and I have a positive expectations at least. That's my
yeah.
personal one. I'm not under any influence or I don't want to influence anyone. But you know,
Hmm.
what about you?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Georgian Dream is repeatedly saying that once President Trump comes to office, and we touched upon this at the beginning of this conversation, that once Trump comes to the White House, because of some of the shared values or shared principles, um, Georgian Dream will have much better relations with Trump administration than it did with the Biden administration. And two points that they very often point out are: one, the sanctity of the family. That's the value of Donald Trump. That's what they say. And second, what's the second one? There is LGBTQI propaganda. Um, in general, and they usually emphasize on propaganda for in underage minors. That's something that the GD is saying now. Um, However, they are building their message boxes, they're obviously missing out a few other important values and points that Trump um, emphasized on during his election period. One of them being Iran, and second one, China. Very big challenges. Middle East will be on President Trump's immediate decision making list, that's for sure. Iran is a major challenge for the US, both current and incoming administrations. So that's one point. And the second is, of course, China, which is the biggest threat, both economic and maybe potentially down the road, even military threat to the United States. And everybody in Washington is talking about those two things. Now, what the Georgian Dream government has done, particularly in the past year, is not going to help GD's approach with Donald Trump, because in May, as you remember, Iranian president died in a helicopter crash, and Raisi and Prime Minister Gobakhidze went to Tehran to deliver his condolences to the Iranian leadership. And there are some pictures that are it would be very difficult to explain to President Trump. How is it that Georgian prime minister is standing next to Hezbollah and Hamas leaders after October 7th attacks on Israel? So that would be one point that I think is missing from the GD's message box. The second one is China, of course. During President Trump's administration first term, there was a major movement towards building this port on the Black Sea coast called Anaglia. Eventually, because of some subjective, objective, political, financial, all kinds of different issues, Anaglia port stopped moving forward. But the United States had a major stake and very um, obviously stated, publicly stated interest in building the port. And at the time, President Trump's Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, even publicly said that the United States wanted this port to be constructed. So earlier this year, Georgian government signed a strategic partnership deal with China, which was very unexpected in many ways, because Georgia at that time was the strategic partner of the United States, something that has stopped about 10 days ago as a part of the policy revision from the United States toward Georgia. So that's another point that President Trump will have to hear some sort of arguments that how about China? How is it that you're getting so close to China when you're distancing yourself from the United States and the West? So we'll see where that goes. But those are the two things that GD says that Trump will be sympathetic to them because of the family values and LGBTQ propaganda. But they are completely missing larger points that President Trump, in my view, would care more about than family rights inside Georgia. And those two things would be Iran and China. And Georgi, if you want to add something, I think we have
No, I
a question.
absolutely agree with you. You know, the foreign policy priorities of the incoming administration and President Trump in particular are very, very well set by you. I mean, highlighted by you. And I think what the current government or Georgian Dream government has done for the last couple of years basically fully contradicts these priorities. And the family values or LGBT rights are internal domestic issues in Georgia, and in any country that we are talking about. So it's not about that. The what is essential for the United States, I think, and for Georgia in this in this very crucial moment for global security is partnership, honest and open partnership. At the moment, Georgia, with the current setup in the government, is not able to show not only for the far away located countries, but also for for close allies. I'm far away. I'm talking about not distance, but I'm talking about the political, connectivity type of thing. So we had a strategic partnership charter with the United States, which was basically suspended some several days ago, and we've seen the statement of the State Department about it, which was a very sad moment for this country, and everybody who understands what does that mean for Georgia is very saddened, and we really understand this move came after a long time, basically looking at what the current government is doing, and basically this decision was the last resort to show that this country is moving in the wrong direction, and that was done, unfortunately. But we cannot question the decisions of the United States leadership. When it comes to the regional outlook of how Georgia is basically perceived by the region, I would say that it actually plays a significant part, but in the regional affairs. But what is sad about it that Georgia is not utilizing its potential, political potential, as well as some contribution, the potential for contribution for regional or international security, and this became evident for the last several years, as you mentioned already, and this cannot be seen from the side of the Western partners with applause. I mean, they invested in this country so much in the establishing the democratic institutions, in establishing the system of international security of this country, basically assisting this country in pursuing the policy of non-recognition of occupied territories, and helping this country financially, uh, in politically after the 2008 war.
It
So
was
Georgian
President
people,
Biden, by the way.
it
Yeah.
was President
At
Biden,
the
exactly, his
time.
visit, and yes, an allocation of $1 billion. As I
From the
remember
Senate
this
side, I should
gesture,
clarify that.
I
Yeah.
remember this gesture actually that he showed like this. He said, and this is true. And basically, that's why the Georgian people are very saddened with the, freezing this kind of strategic relationship with the United States, because uh, most of the country doesn't want to be seen by our friends in the United States, or for that matter in Europe, as we are not really grateful for this assistance or help. We're very much grateful, but for some reasons we are not at the moment, are able to steer our destiny officially. That's why we're in the streets, we are demonstrating, we are protesting, and we want to bring this country back on track.
Mhm.
Track that will bring us to the west, not to the north.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine, even though we don't know exactly what President Zurabishvili uh, told Trump, except for the readout or small comment that she made on social media after the meeting, which was that she had an in depth conversation with him and made him aware of the stolen elections. And that's the quote, stolen elections. So that's also an important choice of words, in my view. I don't want to get into any sort of conspiracy theories, but I think there is something to that, or at least for the consumer standpoint, reading that, it looks like it was chosen with a reason, for a reason. So that's another sort of separating maybe point for the Georgian Dream government. People are accusing them of stealing elections, and that would be a point to bring up and talk to President Trump about uh, at some point, probably. My apologies with that. So very interesting. We should see how it all evolves. We did have one question, if you would like to take it, Georgi, which is, can we explain what's the benefit? There you go. What holds significant political importance for the United States in particular in advancing the objectives of America First policy? So, hey, but basically the question is, how would Georgia fall into Donald Trump's uh, idea of
America first.
interests globally?
Well, thank you for question. Della 20, whatever. And well, I would like to answer this question very briefly, but in a concise and but very clear way. Georgia simply is the golden gate to a huge region, which is Caucasus, South Caucasus, and the Northern Caucasus as well, which is southern Russia at the moment, and the vast heartland of Eurasia, which is Central Asia. Why it is important? This area is populated with more than 100 million, with 100 million population, plus it hosts a lot of mineral resources. Just to name the few, it has 6% of world oil reserves, which might sound not very much, but it is important if you want to regulate the global markets. And this area of oil exploration is basically uh, invested heavily by the Western companies, including, if you're talking about the America First, we're talking about huge investment of Chevron in Kazakh oil, in the second largest single oil field in the history of mankind, which is Tengiz oil field in the Caspian. Plus, we are talking about the diversification of the oil and gas supply for Middle Eastern context. We're talking about Israel. Israel is getting its oil from Azerbaijan, not being dependent on the Middle Eastern oil, which is very important for the safety and security of this country. And if we go to Europe, we are talking about the substitution of deliveries of the gas, natural gas from Russia by Azerbaijan, and in the future, in the coming future, by gas from Turkmenistan. And by the way, Turkmenistan is the third largest producer of gas, natural gas in the world. So we are talking about resources, and if we're talking about the America First policy of Donald Trump and rivalry with China, we have to understand that for Chinese, this area of Central Asia, especially, is a very much important thing because it's an important region and terrain. Why? Because of the existence of all sorts of resources that we are just talking about.
Mhm.
And this is another source which is not connected to the maritime delivery or maritime supply chain, which can be blocked by some other countries of the region we are talking about. Maybe United States, maybe Japan or others, and this is safer for them in terms of the international influence, um, to have this kind of direct link to the Central Asia and its resources. And I would like to remind you that China is also heavily investing in the transportation infrastructure in the region, and very I think in spring this year or beginning of summer, if I'm not mistaken, they signed a very big contract between China, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan to build the railroad going from China to Uzbekistan and down to Caspian, which is the southern leg of the middle corridor that actually passes from Europe to China through the Caucasus and Caspian Sea and the Black Sea as well. So we are talking about a revival of the great game of the beginning of the 20th century for Central Asia, where countries like Georgia and connected to Georgia, Azerbaijan as well, play a key role, as I said, as a golden gate to this whole area, which is very important, very rich.
Yeah, and one thing to add to that, I would say I think you alluded to it, is access from Central Asia to Western markets, which Georgia
Exactly.
is presenting the route that bypasses both, whether it's energy or other trade routes, bypasses both China and Iran. I'm sorry, Russia and Iran. So that would be another point of interest that I would think will fall under Donald Trump's America First policy, to have um, countries, partners, friends in the region, which are giving America the opportunity to, again, avoid some of those countries that America will see as a challenge.
And there is also one more issue that I just want to briefly mention. The NATO recently, last year, they approved the Black Sea security strategy. And Georgia is a Black Sea country.
Yes.
So with the territory that occupied is which is occupied by Russia in the western Georgia, Abkhazia, and if you will connect this with the behavior of Russia in Ukraine and the occupation of the coastline of Ukraine and Crimea, for that matter, uh, that is very much important for the southeast flank of the NATO, like, security-wise, militarily.
Hmm.
So
Though it's questionable what kind of relationship, based on America First policy, Trump will have towards NATO. I don't expect any major changes. I think it's he's using his usual sort of language and attitude towards NATO, saying that if you want America involved in your protection, you need to pay up. So we'll see where that goes. The last time the U.S. did not withdraw from NATO, and now at that time only 3% of three countries were paying 2% of their GDP on their own defense, and now we have over 20. I think it's 23 countries that are paying 2%, and now we're even talking about increasing it to 2.5 to 3%. So we'll see. NATO is a topic that, at this point, there are too many unknowns from Trump, but we'll see.
that's very true, but unfortunately, thanks to the conflict of in Ukraine, or invasion of Ukraine by Russia, uh, most of the countries in NATO basically beefed up their military spending, and
Mhm.
they now clearly understand the threat that comes from east, and they are very much preparing for what the future brings in terms of the, security wise.
Mhm. Yeah.
First of all, we are talking about the eastern flank, which are, Czech Republic, Baltic states, now Finland and Sweden, the the newcomers, as well as Bulgaria and Romania. So,
Mhm.
and of course, Turkey is on the alert all the time, and we know it because we're neighbors, and it's our region, and we can feel it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Gary, we've been talking for 40 minutes. Initially, we thought that the first
But it was a
conversation
pleasure.
uh, would be about 30 to 45 minutes. But before we wrap this up, let's talk a little more about what happened in Syria. And especially, I think you should sort of, from your perspective, how well you know North Caucasus region, which is one of the most turbulent regions in Russia. What kind of impact Syria had, or Russia's loss in Syria had on the region. If you can say anything about that, I think it would be important. I understand this is a dramatic shift of the conversation from Georgia and Trump and demonstrations, but I do believe there is some sort of impact, and everything has a lasting impact on small, turbulent regions and countries, especially something as big as that. So I don't think there is anybody in the world at this point that does not know that Bashar al-Assad's regime has fallen. He escaped to Russia and now is seeking refuge in Russia together with Ukraine's former president, as well as some other leaders, including some from Georgia. And um, Russia is basically losing its stronghold in the Middle East, which was in Syria, both the naval and air bases there. Russia most likely will have to take its troops out, even though we don't know how many exactly. It could be something from 500 to 2,000. It's unclear. Uh, so, and Russia's regions of North Caucasus are very closely monitoring what's happening there because of because of the religious connection, because of some of the ethnic connections. Without getting too much into the details about what was happening during the whole ISIS movement. Um, in Syria and how it was connected to North Caucasus. So, again, a super long question. Apologize to the viewers, but wanted to sort of set the stage for your expertise here. So, the question is, what kind of impact is Russia's loss in Syria is having on North Caucasus at this point?
I think it's not only Russia. I would say there are no, three factors that disappeared from the Syrian scene altogether. First, it's the regime of Bashar al-Assad. First, second is the Russian influence. Still we know that the troops and Russian military are remaining there, but some of them already left by airplanes because there was a convoy of airplanes sent from Russia to pick them up and fly home. And what we know already that three or four vessels are ordered to basically sail from Baltic and the Northern Sea to Syria to pick up all this military equipment that is left behind in Syria by Russians. And then I think this basis will be closed for good.
Gary, let
And the
me just
third,
very briefly, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do we know
yes,
where they're taking the equipment and the troops?
yes,
And don't forget your third
yes.
point.
I will say first the third point. The third point is the disappearance of Iranian factor from the Syrian scene, and for that matter, a breakup of this policy of the Shia crescent running from the Mediterranean. I mean, through what starting from let's say Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and going down all the way to basically Yemen and Houthis, as we know. So this one was broken, and the whole Middle Eastern policy of Iran is basically in ruins at the moment. So going back to your question about where they were taken, there are three airfields that I actually aware of. One is Chkalovsk, which is basically one of the Moscow airports. I mean, military airport near Moscow. Second is, but all of them are basically in the central part of Russia. I don't remember by heart which ones, but I checked in the map. It was this morning actually I read about it. Somebody sent it to me. Um, and all of them are in the center of Russia proper. So where these troops will be used, we don't know. But presumably, I think, taking into account the need of the professional military in the Russian-Ukrainian front, I think they will be sent there. So there is no other place that I can see them be deployed. Uh, so these three factors, the disappearance of the three factors that I just mentioned, basically that shapes or might reshape the whole region from the beginning, and there are some reasons for that. Why? Because Russia was basically militarily depleted in Ukraine to a degree that they could not act, and they could not basically confront this very quick offensive that was happening a couple of days ago. uh, Iran and the Iranian proxies like Hezbollah, for example, they were actually depleted by actions of Israel after the October 7th last year, because basically Israel destroyed to a greater degree Hamas, and basically uh, beheaded the leadership of Hezbollah, for sure, and that's why they were not being able to basically withstand the pressure coming from the opposition in Syria, and basically they withdrew. That created a window of opportunity to the current government that actually substitutes Assad regime in Syria. Now, connection to the Northern Caucasus, there are a number of issues that we have to basically mention as a point, uh, because we don't have much time. First, the ethnic issue. Yes, you are right. There are a lot of Northern Caucasian people who are basically for more than a century already were basically deported from the Russian Empire, and they are settled in Syria and some other Middle Eastern countries. So this is a point of concern. The second and very important is, and to understand the security, basically issue Russia might face in the future, is that a lot of fighters from the Northern Caucasus are they joined the ranks of previously ISIS, and then migrated to this new movement that we are now seeing in the government in Syria. So they have families, friends, and people whom they know, and they're worried about them. And the third is that basically the influence of Turkey or the Turkish leader Erdogan in that region, that he is seen as a how can I put it, as a man who is protecting Sunni interest in the Middle East, and especially that goes to Syria. And we have to understand that the vast majority of the population in the Northern Caucasus are Sunni Muslims. So this is a religious sentiments that these people residing in the Northern Caucasus, they have They have people to people connection, as well as they have people who are fighting for the current government or against Assad regime, and effectively against Russians as well for many years. So this is kind of a situation in the Caucasus, in the northern Caucasus, and they are watching the situation very closely. We know about it.
Hmm. Have you seen anything about the Kremlin's reaction to it? There were some reports that maybe the internet was out and
There was some problems with internet in Dagestan, Chechnya, and Ingushetia. These are basically the three republics in the northern Caucasus that can make troubles to the central government, and most rebellious people are living in that territories. 2 or 3 days, the internet was totally out. Some people say that they didn't want to spread the information what is going on in Syria, just to calm down people and just control the potential protests, or some sort of expression of what is going on there. Second was that basically they shut up internet just because there were some information about threat of Ukrainian drones to bomb certain bases in the northern Caucasus,
okay.
um, or just just to keep people out of information of what is going on, not only in Syria or drone attack, but also what is going on in Georgia, because the we should not underestimate events in Georgia and what kind of impact these events can have for the people in the northern Caucasus, with whom we have actually, you know, thousands of years of ties, cultural and others, and they're very much basically, supportive of, democratization processes in Georgia, and we know about it as well.
Yeah, yeah. That's very insightful of you. Thank you very much for that. And that's very important as well that, as you rightly said, Georgian and North Caucasus, initially the independence movements that we saw at the breakup of the Soviet Union, or even before that, long before that, they sort of developed in a parallel way. And then Russia's wars in Chechnya basically destroyed some of those movements and actually destroyed, um, I don't know, we'll say temporarily or for good. So, a very, very important point. I have not thought about that, to be honest. The impact of Georgia's events on North
Uh,
Caucasus, which may be actually more tangible for the region than the events in Syria.
what is interesting, I just want to add to this that a couple of days ago, the Council of the Association of the Northern Caucasian People, which actually, the membership of all of the republics of the northern, they made a statement, and they sent the statement to President Zurabishvili, expressing their willingness, if there will be a need, to fight for Georgia.
Oof.
Well, I don't think that we need that, but I am very grateful to hear this,
Mhm.
and
Very
I'm very
interesting.
pleased.
Well, that
Yeah,
indicates a level of support. Yeah, for sure. I hope it does not come to that ever. God forbid. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. That's what I said
Yeah.
as well.
I don't know if Tony is in the background listening to all this and wants to join in. And uh,
He's
thank
Tony.
you, Tony. Sorry, Tony. There he is.
Here
So,
we go. Great beginning. And thank you for an interesting and informative program today. And of course, I would like to thank everybody who listened to us. As always, your thoughts, questions, and suggestions are very important. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dario. Link is included, and receive more notifications to our future programs. Thank you very much, and thank you, Iya. Thank you, Georgi.
outstanding. Well, thank you, whoever was watching. Please watch us again. I will try to do this every week. and send us questions. And you don't have to wait until the live show. You can send questions, and Tony here will make sure that we know about the questions in advance. So thanks very much for watching and listening. And Georgi, thank you very much. It's
Thank
super
you,
nice
Ia.
to it's super nice to see you in person like this.
And I would like to thank our viewers and listeners. And I would like to ask you to come back to us and hear firsthand information.
So take